Welcome to today's webinar on Building Bridges, Getting Started with Beginner Students. My name is Heather Smith and I am a U.S. Regional Representative for the RCM Certificate Program. With me today is my colleague, Carrie Ward, Manager of the Educational Development and Initiatives for Digital Learning. To begin this webinar, I thought I'd start out with a personal story. As a piano teacher of several years, I found myself getting a bit more relaxed and mostly teaching repertoire to my students. I really wasn't implementing the study of technique, theory, or musicianship as thoroughly as I knew I should have, and this deficiency was tactfully brought to my attention in 2012. The mother of one of my intermediate level students asked me if I would take a look at a program that was fairly new in Utah. She wanted her daughter to have a chance to participate in the RCM certificate program. I didn't know much about the organization, so I did some research, and I found a conference where the RCM certificate program was holding a showcase a few weeks later in Dallas, Texas. While I was at that showcase session, I had a huge aha moment. I realized that what I was lacking in my teaching, and really what this mother wanted for her daughter, the RCM certificate program could provide. And that was a structured curriculum which included technique, sight reading, ear training, and theory at every level. It allowed students to progress at their own pace, and it gave my students something to work toward, which was an end-of-year assessment that was administered by a qualified third-party examiner. After the conference, I decided to try out the program with 3 of my students, the one intermediate level student, and also 2 of my first-year beginner students, who happened to be my son and my niece. Yes, I know, I attempted to teach my own child. That spring, those 3 students took their exam and did pretty well. Based on that experience, I realized that this program could be used not only with intermediate and advanced level students, but with elementary and beginner level students as well. So what is the RCM certificate program? It is a comprehensive system of study and assessment for 22 instruments, including voice and speech arts and drama. It offers teachers a carefully designed structured curriculum which consists of 4 pillars: repertoire, musicianship, theory, and technique. As this diagram shows, students are not just learning pieces. The approach is much broader than that. The RCM certificate program is designed to help teachers have the resources they need to train well-rounded musicians. In repertoire, students have the opportunity to learn and study music from a wide range of periods and styles, from Baroque to contemporary. This includes music from iconic greats such as J.S. Bach and Mozart to current composers of our time. With technique at the preparatory A level, which is the first level of the RCM certificate program, this includes learning to identify and play 5-note scales and simple chord sequences. In musicianship, students develop skills in ear training and sight reading. Daily sight reading and ear training practice at home is encouraged, and teachers are supported in monitoring their students' progress with weekly practice reports and tests to give their students during their lessons. As we know, the study of theory helps students to progress and understand the music they are playing at a much deeper level. In the RCM curriculum, theory concepts are introduced early through activities well suited to exploration between teacher and student in the lesson. These are the publications we offer at the preparatory A level. They include the Celebration Series, which is a collection of piano repertoire, Technical Requirements for Piano, 4-star sight reading and ear tests, and Celebrate Theory, which is an interactive book for teaching theory in a musically relevant and engaging way. In addition to these print publications for the preparatory level, we offer some great digital products to support your students' musicianship and theory development, and Carrie will be talking about them later in this presentation. The 4 pillars of teaching, repertoire, musicianship, theory, and technique, are all embedded in these publications and digital products. The RCM certificate program also created a syllabus. The syllabus is a step-by-step guide created specifically to support the music teacher as they work toward an assessment examination with their student. The examinations are run by a professional college of examiners who provide valuable feedback to the student and their families, confirming what students do well, and encouraging their musical development. The syllabus contains all of the music you can find in the RCM Certificate Program Repertoire book, as well as a list of pieces from many other composers and method books that students are able to play during an examination. There are syllabi for many instruments that you can find at this address and can be downloaded free of charge. For our purposes today, I will walk us through the preparatory A-level requirements step by step, as if we were preparing students for an exam. The ability to pass the preparatory level exam doesn't necessarily equate to how long a student has been taking lessons. More importantly is what a student has learned during their early years of instruction. As I mentioned, the piano syllabus is listed at rcmusic.com/syllabi and can be downloaded free of charge. For me, the syllabus is like my Bible. As you look through the piano syllabus, you'll find that the level-by-level requirements are carefully laid out. You can see how the pillars of learning are listed in the requirements for a beginner level student. Theory is assessed separately. We're now going to go through each of these requirements. Let's start with repertoire. Students play 3 contrasting repertoire pieces for a preparatory A exam. 2 come from the repertoire list in the syllabus. This includes music from our celebration series, Piano Repertoire, as well as various pieces including method books. The third selection is the teacher's choice selection. This allows you to select some of your favorite teaching pieces that might not be listed in the syllabus. This gives you and your students flexibility. Most likely, you have accumulated a large music library during your teaching career. What is great about the RCM certificate program is you don't have to sacrifice teaching familiar music that you know your students love playing. Our publication, Celebration Series, Piano Repertoire Prep A, includes a wide collection of music ranging from the classical to the contemporary. This includes music from composers such as Catherine Rollin, Dennis Alexander, Nancy and Randall Faber, and many others. In addition to the wonderful music in the Celebration Series, additional repertoire from a wide range of method books is listed in the piano syllabus. This is the list of method books in the syllabus for the preparatory A-level. As I mentioned before, the teacher's choice selection allows you to teach other favorite pieces that are not listed in the syllabus. So if you don't see your favorite method book on this list, that's not a problem. You can still choose music from any method of choice. The goal is to provide teachers a solid structure, but also the flexibility to customize your own style of teaching. There are 2 technical requirements for students at the preparatory A-level, and those are pentascales and chords. The 4 following keys are required at the preparatory A-level: C major, G major, D major, as well as A minor. For the technical tests, we strive for minimum required tempo, as well as control of the tempo, evenness of tone, fluency, and direction. I thought it would be fun for you to see what is required for a student at the preparatory A-level. So I recruited one of my cute little students to demonstrate each of the requirements. Austin has been studying piano with me for a little over a year now. We use pentascales with beginner students in order to build a strong foundation for their musical growth.
Austin, we're going to go ahead and start with your technique. Can you play for me your C major legato pentascale with the right hand? Thank you.
For the chords, preparatory A-level students will play chords up 1 octave in a triad sequence in a C major scale. In this video, you will see my student demonstrating the triad sequence in blocked form. Students at this level will also play the triad sequences in broken form.
Austin, now let's hear your C major triad sequence with the right hand blocked. Thank you.
Because Austin and I focused on these foundational musicianship and technical skills, In addition to repertoire, I am now able to help her identify chords, pentascales, and intervals in the pieces she plays. This helps her make connections between pieces and makes her a stronger musician. By working on playbacks, I know she is hearing musical nuance, which allows her to become a more engaging player and a stronger musician as a whole. Okay, let's move on to the musicianship portion of the assessment. The requirements for the ear tests are fairly simple. Students will clap back a simple pattern, identify whether the triad is major or minor, and play back 4 notes. For the clap back portion, students will clap back a short 2-measure phrase after hearing it twice. This is what a sample of a clap back passage looks like for the preparatory A level.
Can you go ahead and stand up? We're going to start with your clap back. I'm going to play this for you twice, and then you're going to clap it back. This is in 4/4 time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Second time. Your turn. Thank you.
For ear training, students will be asked to identify a simple triad as either major or minor. The chords in the pentascale are played and then the chord is played in root position. Here is Austin identifying the triads.
Now let's do the chords. Is this major or minor?
Major.
And this one.
Minor.
Thank you.
The last ear test requirement is the playback. The student will play back the first 3 notes of a melody from either a C major or G major scale. The length of the melody is approximately 4 notes long. And here she is playing back a simple 4-note passage.
Now we're going to do the playback. I'm going to play this for you 2 times and then you will play it back. This is in C major. Second time. Your turn. Thank you.
For the rhythm portion of sight reading, students are asked to tap a steady beat for a measure, and then while maintaining that beat, they are asked to tap, clap, or speak the rhythm. This student of mine is a little bit of an overachiever. Instead of just tapping and clapping, she enthusiastically likes to tap, clap, and count the rhythm. Unlike most of my students, Austin likes to count out loud.
Austin, can you tap for a steady measure this rhythm right here and then continue tapping while you clap the rhythm?
1, 2, 3, and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4.
Thank you.
Students at the preparatory A level are asked to play 2 4-note melodies written on the ground staff. One will be in the treble clef and the other in the bass clef.
Please look over this line and then this line, and I'll tell you when you can play that. Okay, you can go ahead. Thank you. That was everything.
And that's all that is required at the preparatory A level for a beginner. From my own experience as a teacher, I have found that this program is very achievable for a first-year student. What I have really loved about using the RCM certificate program in my own studio over the past 8 years is that it works for my students at all levels and all abilities from beginner to advanced and provides a solid musical foundation for any age group. I strongly recommend taking a look through any of our resource materials available through the program. They are all there to support you and your teaching. So now I'll turn the time over to Carrie Ward, who will share with you in greater detail some of the digital products RCM offers to support the musicianship and theory pillars.
Thank you, Heather. I'm Kerry Ward, the Manager of Educational Development in the Digital Learning Department at the RCM. And there's no question that technology can play a critical role in engaging 21st century students. And the RCM has developed products which promote this engagement while supporting musicianship development and theory study. Let me take you through our digital offerings and how our products support your students in their individual development.
So to start off, we all know that technology is an ever-growing resource and instructional tool, and it's only continuing to gain momentum and becoming viable for use in every lesson. And the RCM has developed an outstanding digital suite, which gives you, the teacher, the necessary resources, whether that being for, instructional purposes, for assessment purposes, that you can use in your studio to set your students up for success in the 21st century. And these tools that the RCM has developed really help you bridge the traditional instructional and assessment approaches with modern day delivery methods. And whether that being, on a smartphone, on a tablet, whether it's on a computer, really marrying these traditional tried and true instructional and assessment approaches with these modern day delivery methods. A few ways that the RCM Digital Suite supports you as a teacher is that it offers the ideal way to complement your in-person instruction. It supports student learning between classes. It includes curated resources aligned with the RCM curriculum, but also provides you with assessment and reporting capabilities to support students and track their progress. We offer online courses, apps, and tools for all levels, starting with your beginner students. Now, to begin my discussion on the RCM Digital Suite and how it offers this 21st century support, the first aspect that I'm going to be speaking to throughout the presentation is the engagement of the digital native. And now we've all heard this term somewhere before of the digital native. And really what this means is that students that have been brought up with technology, that have been inundated with it and is very much a part of their daily lives. Now, one of the most challenging aspects that I'm sure all of you have struggled with before with engaging the digital native is that many technological platforms become outdated too quickly. Once you've mastered one platform already, it's outdated and you have to move on to the next. So it's very hard to keep up with, different platforms, and you feel like you're just trying to catch up constantly with technology. And this is a struggle, a very real struggle. But with our digital suite, we have a very progressive approach that we're constantly updating our platforms to keep up with this trend. And a lot of these changes are in response to feedback from users. So we have this constant dialogue going on with users. We're getting feedback and we're updating and making changes that the users want. And really this feedback is important because it promotes this engagement of the digital native. And as technology progresses, so do our platforms. So it never feels outdated. The next aspect I'm going to be speaking to when taking you through the RCM's digital suite of products is the promotion of differentiation. Now, we all know that this is a very key aspect in any kind of music instruction, as it requires the teacher to be able to support multiple learning levels and styles within their studio or classroom. Now, across all the different platforms in the RCM's digital suite, we have this support for differentiation built in, and this exists in the form of different instructional methods, different types of activities that are embedded within the platforms, and the ability to track student progress and determine areas of strength and weaknesses, and as well as accurate assessment reporting. I'll be highlighting a lot of these key aspects as I take you through the platforms that really support your students depending on their individual needs. And another key aspect that the RCM's digital suite offers teachers is a wide variety of teaching resources. So we provide you with access to curated resources to challenge and support students that you can integrate directly within your teaching. And this exists with tools for full lesson planning development for instructional material, but then also assessment tools as well, and the ability to add resources and modify lessons as you need. So let's take a look now at the resources that we have available. The first platform I'd like to go through that is available in the RCM Digital Suite is the RCM ear training tool. Now, as music educators, we know how crucial ear training is in the development of musicianship. And I'll go through the platform and point out ways this fosters this development and as well engages the learner and prepares them for the ear training portion of their practical exam. So the first component I'd like to take a look at in the RCM ear training tool is the instructional component. And this is located at the top of the interface, and there's just a couple things I'd like to highlight here. So if we can look at this particular instruction, the student is being asked to sing along with the scale and the 3 notes that follow, but then also to identify the second note as the 3rd or 5th degree of the scale. So you can notice that we have some iconography here that's being married along with a action verb, and they are color-coded. So this really gives a visual cue if the student is more of a visual type learner rather than just being purely textual based. So we have some differentiation built in here to engage multiple different types of learning styles. Now within the RCM ear training tool, we actually have performance-based types of activity too as well. And this is an example of an instructional type that the student will be listening to a melody and then being asked to record and perform the melody back and then check their accuracy and rate their performance. So we actually have self-based assessment activity types too as well within this. But I'll be going more into this activity type later. The next component I'd like to take a look at is the display box. And this contains any pertinent information the student may need to answer the question. And this contains things like key signatures, if there's any kind of multiple choice selection being required. But then also we have feedback will be displayed too as well. So we have constructive feedback if the student incorrectly identifies a concept, but then we also have successful feedback in the form of presenting the actual concept. So in this case, the student was asked to identify this triad as either minor or major. They successfully identified it as major, and what's being presented is an E major triad. Now at the bottom of the interface we have the audio controls, and this is where the student can play, pause the audio, but then also enable their microphone if it's required. But then if we look at the instructions too, the same iconography is being used. So for listening, the same play button is being used to play the audio. So the student can start to make those connections between what's being asked of them in the instructions and the different types of interactions they need to make within the interface. Now also at the bottom of the interface will exist any multiple choice selections. So in this case I'm being asked to select between scale step 3 or scale step 5, and then I just simply click my selection to answer the question. And the last component I'd like to take a look at is the detachable keyboard, and it's located in the top right of the interface, and the student just simply clicks the icon and it will open up the detachable keyboard for them to use at their convenience. Now let's go through the platform itself. So I'm going to go through a couple question types here. So if you remember, this is one that I presented earlier with singing along with the scale and the 3 notes that follow and identifying the second note as either the 3rd or the 5th degree of the scale. So I'm going to go ahead here and play the example. Okay, so now the example is completed, and now I make my selection with these different options that I presented here at the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. And I was successful in my attempt. Now if the student wanted to use the embedded keyboard, all they would do is locate the icon in the top right here, and then the keyboard appears to them, and then they can input the notes they wish. One important aspect to note within the RCM ear training tool is that all of the audio was recorded on an actual acoustic piano, and there's no MIDI sequencing whatsoever. Okay, so for this particular question, I'm going to incorrectly identify this. So I'm going to play the audio example. Okay, now I'm going to incorrectly identify this as a perfect 5th. So I'm going to make my selection. And then I'm presented with some constructive feedback that I can apply to my future attempts for this particular question. So what I'm going to do is reset the question. Now if you notice, even though I reset the question, my first initial answer, so in this case the perfect 5th, is being marked in red. And the reason for this is the reporting functionality that comes at the end of the question set, which I'll go over. So just moving on, I'm going to make my next selection. So in this case, I've correctly identified this as a perfect 4th, but a perfect 5th will still be marked as my first initial answer. Okay, so what I'm going to do is move ahead to the end of the question set. So I'm going to get some right and get some wrong here. And then I wanted to show the reporting functionality at the end. So once I complete a full question set, I'm being asked to submit it. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to submit all and finish. Then after I submit my attempt, what I'm presented with is a results screen. So I'm able to see the date that it was completed, if I finished it, how long it took, what the overall mark was, and grade. But then as you scroll down, you're able to see the complete history of all the attempts. So this is a great tool for teachers to gather diagnostic evidence, to see how a student is progressing, whether they're struggling in certain aspects. So in this particular question, I might be struggling to identify with a perfect fifth. This was the question that we were presented with earlier when I initially incorrectly identified this as a perfect fifth, but when in fact it was a perfect fourth. And then so on and so forth, so that the teacher can really gather the evidence that they need to really set their students up to succeed. But then students can also use this too as well to see how well they're doing in all of these particular aspects. So the last thing I'd like to take a look at in the RCM ear training tool is how the performance activities function. So in this particular example, the student is going to listen to this melody. They'll hear one measure of the basic beat and then the melody twice, and then they'll be prompted to record and perform the rhythmic pattern you heard by clapping, and then they're going to check their accuracy by using the rhythm grid and the compare button.
And then it asks us here, if you're using this on an iPad or other mobile device, it will ask to access the microphone here. She's going to go ahead and tap allow. It's just a security measure here. And then now she's going to tap the microphone icon, listen to one measure of the basic beat tapped in, and then she's going to repeat that rhythm of the melody that she just heard here. So go ahead and do that. 3, 2, 1. Then she's going to tap on the microphone again. And then here is where she can check her work against the answer that will be revealed. So go ahead and tap on the check icon. And you see that she's pretty accurate to that there. So either you as the teacher or the student can kind of check on against the rhythm grid how she did. I think she was pretty accurate there, so I'm going to go ahead and give her 4 stars, and then she can be happy just like the little star there.
So when looking at all of the features in the RCM ear training tool, you can really see how this fosters the development of musicianship. Now let's take a look at our theory offerings. So Digital Theory supports the Celebrate Theory series to provide students with an opportunity to work on paper and online, offering a blended approach. So let's start with our elementary theory apps. So these apps are designed to support the development of your elementary theory student and aids in assisting in laying the foundation of elementary theory, and is also designed to engage young learners. But let's take a look at how this actually achieves this. So upon the initial opening of the app, you're able to see how this may engage young learners, that this follows a carnival theme, and that each of these tents relate to a particular theory concept. So in this case, we have intervals and chords and so on and so forth. So the student can hop into these tents and start working on the material that they need to work on. Okay, so let's take a look at an example here. So I've chosen scales for this particular example, and let's just hop right in. So I'm just going to tap the tent, which is going to bring me into the unit. And then what the student is presented with here is a couple aspects. So the first thing that they're presented with is an actual learning path, if you notice from the start and the end points here, and then the arrows to give the learning path through these modules. Now, this is a suggested learning path, but the student or teacher doesn't have to adhere by this. And what I mean by that is that if a student maybe has to focus a little bit more on the F major scale rather than the G major scale, they don't have to go through that every time to get to the F major scale. So the teacher is able to differentiate this for the individual student's needs. So let's just take a look at the first module here. So I'm just going to select just the major scale pattern.
Do you remember a scale is a musical ladder where the notes move by step? Now that we know more about half steps and whole steps, we can see that the pattern of whole steps and half steps is the same for every major scale.
So you're able to see there are a couple aspects already. So also keeping with the carnival theme to engage the young learners here with a couple aspects, but then also the visual of the notation, in this case the C major scale, but then also the narration that's being supported of the visual. So let's listen to a little bit more and see how we engage the learners with this particular learning concept.
It goes whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step.
So you can see with this being a digital whiteboard that we're able to provide annotations, graphics, that really harness different learning styles, using the auditory and the visual aspects of it, that the student can work with this any way that they need for their particular learning style, whether that's working, with the teacher or with their parent or individually. So they're able to work with it with any way that they need to. So I just skipped ahead here a little bit further into the lesson, and what I wanted to highlight is that this isn't just purely instructional material, but we also have diagnostic assessments built within it in order to help the student retain information. And I'm just going to play just an example of how we actually do that.
The first note of the scale is called the tonic. What about the fifth note of the scale where the blue pattern begins again? It's called the dominant. Which note is the tonic?
Okay, so now I'm actually presented with a couple choices, and I've chosen C, got it correct.
Which note is the dominant?
And then if I tap G, so on and so forth. So it provides a little bit more learning retention for the material that was just presented to the student. Okay, so that's the instructional material that has been presented within these particular modules. But now I wanted to look at the diagnostic assessments that we have in there. So we looked at a few of them in the actual instructional material, but we actually have embedded games within each of the tense or units. So in this case, we're going to be looking at the puff and hop game for scales. So I'm just going to go ahead and click to get in there. And this is the interaction within this particular game. So within these apps, anything that requires any kind of note entry or an on-screen keyboard is using this particular game. So this can exist in the form of, in this case, scales. We're going to be playing scales, but if we're looking at basic triads or intervals, this game would appear too. So in this case, we're going to be playing particular scales. So I'm going to go ahead and start it up. Okay, so the student is presented with some instructional material here. So in this case, they're going to be playing the G major scale, and they're going to be starting on G here. So I'm going to be inputting the notes as we go on, to actually tapping on the on-screen keyboard. And I'm just going to stop there for a second. So our goal is to get all of the right notes to guide the little puffing across all the little icebergs there. Perfect. So if you do notice as I move along here, you'll notice each of the icebergs kind of sinking a bit, and that gives a time requirement to the actual activity. So the student is just not saying on one note forever, that they're actually encouraged to memorize these scales in a timely manner. And this game definitely helps them with retaining that information. Now, if you notice there, I incorrectly identified the next note, and now the puffin won't move on until I correctly identify the next note, which would be a G. And then there we go, so I'm able to move on. And so on and so forth. So they're able to go through all the scales that they should know up to that particular point in their learning, and they're able to use these games as a mode of assessment. So they're able to go through and practice these scales or whatever the particular concept that they need to be practicing at that time. So let's take a look at one more example before moving on. So in this case, we're going to be looking at the rhythm and meter unit. And then once again, I'm presented with the same interaction. So I have my learning path, which is presented for me, my learning modules that I can hop in and hop out as I see fit, but then also the gamified based assessments, which are really aimed at making learning fun for the student, but then can also be used for a diagnostic assessment tool for the teacher too. So I'm just going to hop into the first learning module here.
What's that sitting next to our half note? Is that some dust on the screen? Nope. It's a dot. The dot means we hold the note for 3 beats. 1 half note plus a quarter note.
So once again, we're presented with narration that's instructing a particular concept, and then having a graphical representation presented before the student. So I'm going to take a look at one more of our very many games within our elementary theory apps, and that's the pizza game here. And the goal here is for the students to add pizza slices which build up the subdivisions of the rhythmic value that's being presented towards them there. So I'm going to go in and start it up. And then I just click to add the subdivisions to equal to the rhythmic value that's being presented to me in the top here. And then if I'm correct, it gives me a little chime. And so on and so forth. So you can see we have very many games which really promote this engagement and learning retention in elementary theory. So I'm going to move on now to our intermediate theory offerings. And once again, this follows a blended approach as well, and supports our Celebrate Theory series to provide students with the opportunity to work on both paper and online, really having that cohesive blending of both experiences. So let's take a look at that. So this is an example of one of our intermediate theory online study guides, and this is a great resource for teachers and students too as well, because it provides teachers extra added resources for instructional material, and I'm going to go through a couple of the features within that, but it also offers the students a little bit more deeper learning if it's required for their particular differentiation. So let's go and take a look at some of the key features within this. Okay, so I'm taking a look right now at the Level 5 online study guide, and I'm in the pitch and notation unit, and I'm taking a look at the section for ledger lines and harmonic equivalence. So we're taking a look at why use ledger lines. So there's a couple aspects that are the same across the entirety of the online study guide, and I'm going to go through some of these elements here with you. So the first one, as you can see, is a narration component. Now this provides some instructional text for the student if they're going through this. So I'm just going to play just a little bit of that now.
Ledger lines are like rungs on a ladder. They let us climb higher or lower on the staff. Here's a great example from Mendelssohn's Consolation.
So you're able to see the narration is embedded directly within the site, but then also too as well we have text that's supporting it. So if the student is more of a text-based learner, they can have that. If they need the mirroring of both auditory and text, that's there too as well. So we're supporting different learning styles. So it's really promoting that differentiation for students here to really support whatever learning style that might be. So we have some instructional based material, and we also have a couple other elements within here too as well. So one powerful aspect of the online study guide is that we're able to take audio examples and embed them directly within here. And so in this case, we're learning, extreme ledger lines, and we've selected this particular piece which exemplifies that. So we do have an audio player here which plays the example, but then also we have score annotations directly embedded within the course too as well, so the student is actually able to follow along with the audio that's being presented. So they can also hear this, but they can also visually follow along too as well. So I'm able to follow as the music's going on, so on and so forth, and analyze for any extreme ledger lines being used. So in this case, it doesn't happen again until the end. So that's just one of the many examples of how instructional material can be used with our online study guide. That's really powerful for the teacher because they're able to take this material, they can use it in lessons, and also assign to students for maybe any extra added study that they may require. So there's very many ways that this can be used to support teaching as well for student success. So let's take a look at some of the assessment models in our intermediate offerings, and they're in the form of practice tests. So let's take a look at one here. So I'm still in the unit on pitch and notation, and I'm going to be asked a series of questions based on the learning expectations of that particular unit. So in this case, I'm being asked to identify this given note here. So I'm going to go ahead and just make my selection. That's good. And I'm going to check my answer. And then at the bottom, the student is presented with some feedback, whether they're right or they're wrong. They're presented with some feedback there too as well. So I'm going to go ahead and go on to the next one. Okay, make my selection. In that case, I'm right. Now I'm going to do one more. Now, in this particular case, I was unsuccessful, but we also provide some feedback, some constructive feedback for them to help retain the information and to apply maybe these necessary changes to the next time that they have to identify that particular note. So we give them some constructive feedback in order to help guide them in their learning. Okay, so I went ahead and jumped ahead and finished all of the questions within this. I got some right, got some wrong, and I'm going to go ahead and submit it just as a student would. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Okay, and then this is what is presented to the teacher and the student. So they're able to see when this particular practice test was completed, how long it took, and what was the overall grade. And then also, as you scroll down, you're able to see all of the particular attempts within this practice test. So they're able to see, what they're getting right, what they're getting wrong, and if they have to adjust their instruction accordingly based on the student's results. The final offerings I'd like to go over within our digital suite of products is our advanced course offerings. Now these include History 9 and 10, and what I'd like to do is play a short video here which go over a lot of the key features within these courses.
Music history comes to life with the Royal Conservatory's online history courses. They're history courses like no other. Students learn while taking a musical journey through time, from the Middle Ages to the modern era. Explore the life, musical style, and careers of influential composers who have shaped the masterpieces we know and love. Designed to excite and engage students, our online courses include more than 400 high-quality embedded audio examples from the Naxos Music Library, over 350 interactive activities, and more than 100 practice questions that prepare students for success. With full course instruction and covering over 200 learning objectives, these courses include everything students need to prepare for the RCM Advanced Level History exams. These online history courses are the ideal resource for students who are looking for the convenience and flexibility of independent study. And for teachers who are looking for innovative new teaching strategies, it can act as a supporting study aid to keep students engaged and learning in between lessons. Music history has never been more engaging. Teachers and students across North America are thrilled about these digital offerings from the Royal Conservatory. Experience legendary learning today.
So you can see we have many powerful platforms which support your students' development. Our digital products used in a blended method, along with your teaching instruction, promotes engagement and student success from the preparatory level all the way to the advanced levels. We have products which support your student along each stage in their development in both the musicianship and the theory pillars of the certificate program. So on behalf of Heather and myself, I'd like to thank you for joining us.